Yeah.
So this is what we were doing, and I know that we are very short on time, so I'm just going to skip writing a lot of code in front of you guys. Let's just jump into what I did inside this application. I created at least three interfaces.
Quick, uh, sorry to interrupt. Quick
Sure, sir.
question.
Sure.
This is Mani here again.
Yes, sir.
So what I've usually found is that repository can justify or can supply, let's say, functions like get single item, get all. Now, typically
Exactly.
there'll be a lot of business logic kind of scenarios where get customers who have pending payments. Now, how do we do those? Can you explain
I'll
any one scenario that's
just
complex?
1 minute, exactly within 1 minute. All right. So we already saw the generic interface, our repository, but for business specific scenarios like extracting out interfaces or extracting out students that we were doing inside our home controller, right? I'm jumping in between now. If you want any specific functionality for a specific type of functionality or a specific type of data model, you extend the iRepository inside this thing in a new interface. So because we were working with home controller and home controller was extracting out information of students, I've created a new interface and I call it iStudent repository. All right. And then I only want to get the student enrollment. So I'm going to say get student enrollments. All right. Probably this matches to your question that I want more specific client specific filtering, right? Give me all the pending orders, right? All you have to do is you have to create a repository called iOrder repository and then probably get pending orders, right? And then inside the implementation, I'm going to undo a few things and I'm going to jump to the implementation. Notice that how I have specifically called it Contoso University.persistent.sql. So this project is specifically for SQL, and that's why I had the repository generic implementation with DB context, which is dealing with SQL, and a student repository, which is inheriting from repository of student. That's through this we are going to get all those three type of function: add, remove, and delete. I'm so sorry. Add without the update, create, read, and delete. All right. So the student repository is going to come through this, and the specific student functionality of get all student enrollment is going to come from this particular implementation, where I'm going to say context.students.group by and group by the enrollment date, and then put it in a new data structure, and then put an order by statement. Right now, if you compare this particular code, right, with the code that we are trying to replace, that is a better implementation, right? There is nothing in line. Everybody with me so far?
Yes.
All right. So we have client specific interfaces which are going to do client specific activity. And then if you implement the repository pattern the right way, this is the pattern that you're going to have. You're going to have a lot of filtering that happens inside specific interfaces. The generic functionality sits inside repository, specific functionality sit inside their own separate interfaces. The implementation of those interfaces, it generally sits inside a proper noun based technology, SQL Server, MongoDB, web APIs. All right. And you write code here of connecting to that particular common noun based, proper noun based technology, and it returns the data to you. This is where the repository finishes. Yes, sir. Go ahead.
So I think in this, like we are actually working on a single entity at a time, like student.
Right.
But let's say if you want to have certain joins across and those things. So with this approach, is it like we need to work on store procedures or any other way we can accomplish that thing?
So Entity Framework has options through which you can connect to stored procedures as well, and then that work can happen through this scenario. Let me first show you how I created the unit of work for this. So if I go back to interfaces project, notice that my unit of work is only dealing with students, and it has only one functionality complete. The other functionality that is missing is probably rollback. I want to have a rollback functionality as well, right? So if anything goes wrong, I'm going to call this function and undo the effect of the work that I'm doing. But all the tables, all the application specific models that you want to interact with, you are going to have to put it inside the unit of work. And that's how the unit of work is going to know that what is the unit. All right, the unit for our application till this point is only student. All right, and that's why we only see one interface here. But if you have a requirement where you want to deal with, say, teacher as well, you will have to create another repository of a teacher. All right, and then only implement the get functionality. With that, let's jump to the implementation of unit of work. The unit of work is also taking school context. Now, this is a repetition of what we saw. What we already saw inside the repository. Inside repository, it was more generic and it was only taking DB context. School context is getting derived from DB context. Unit of work is going to have a direct one-to-one mapping with the data source. All right, and then it is because it is one-to-one mapping, we're going to declare school context, we're going to receive that object, and inside the complete function, we are going to say save changes. All right, one of the expectations from a unit of work that is dealing with school context is that it should have a dispose function. All right, and to have a dispose function here, the unit of work interface needs to be derived from iDisposable. All right, I don't know if you noticed the first time, but then unit of work always inherits or implements iDisposable. So when I close out of this, I'm going to have a dispose function. Eventually, what we are going to do is inside the web project, inside the home controller, we are going to get rid of the school context DB declaration that was at the top, and we are going to make this thing a dependency. We're going to inject this dependency from the outside and we're going to persist it. And inside the about action, all we are going to do is we are going to declare an enumerable and say unit of work dot students dot get students enrollment. All right, now home controller does not have any type of knowledge or dependency on the database itself. We have actually gotten rid of that dependency and all of those mappings and wirings. The way these things tie up together is that we have a global.asax file. I am so sorry. Inside the app start, we are going to have a Unity configuration mapping. When we add the Unity NuGet package, this class is going to get created, and along with this file. And then in this file, we are going to do all the mapping. So our repository of student is going to point to repository of student. Our unit of work is going to point to unit of work. And through this, it'll figure out how to create the repository object, the student repository, unit of work, and the school context itself. And then through these wirings, everything is just going to kind of glue together and work as a whole unit to satisfy the dependencies of the home controller. All right, so I think we are about time. I would stop here and would open the table for discussion, quick questions that we can answer. Anybody, any question?
So the idea here is to basically decouple as much as possible.
Sure.
Do as much specific in each of the decoupled pieces as much as possible.
Sure.
And that's pretty much it, right? And keep the code as tight as possible, right?
Exactly. So you one of the objectives of the application should be to only give instructions in a very non-implementation detail way. All right, all it is saying that, hey, unit of work, you have students, I want to figure out the enrollments of those students, can you help me with that? And it is saying that, hey, don't worry about any of those details, where I get that information from, I'll get the job done, and it gets the data for you. That's it. All right, all of these functions should eventually get to this point, that a generic,
and that's encapsulation.
That's encapsulation, right? So people need to have a great understanding of object-oriented programming principles before they can get to this point. Right. One thing that I had done inside this application is the unit of work had a dispose function, and I had added this dispose function back, and I'm disposing the unit of work. The problem with Unity Container is that Unity Container does not call dispose of these functions. So there is specific, this is something that you will have to specifically do I am doing some research on trying to figure out, okay, I did some research some time back with Unity Container. There is a concept called lifetime management. You will have to write custom lifetime management classes of your Unity container, and those classes can dispose of this. So with that, you will not have to write this dispose function as well. You don't have to dispose this at all. The lifetime management of dispose is going to figure that thing out. All right. So that is like one thing that I wanted to tell you. Anybody, any other question?